Oh hi, I'm back with another monthly favorites video for May. Before I get started on talking about my favorite things from May, I do have a small but exciting announcement. My latest book, Turning 30, is now available. You can get it for most ebook platforms, and you can order it in paperback from almost anywhere that books are sold. You can even have them order it for you at your local independent bookstore. I'm very excited about this. I had a little bit of a pre-order campaign going for it, which ended up turning out way better than I was expecting. On release day, it was number 71 in Vampire Paranormal Romance on Amazon, which is huge. That's huge. I mean, for me. But like, what? So that's really exciting. I feel like it's definitely going to drop like going forward though, because I think most of the people who were going to buy it anyway are the people who pre-ordered it. But anyway, it's still very exciting. And if you haven't ordered it yet, or if you didn't know about it, here it is. It's called Turning 30. It's a rom-com, and it's really funny, and it's also really cozy. And it's just really funny because the love interest is a vampire, but the story is not vampire-y at all. It doesn't have any of your regular vampire things in it, like vampire hunters or witches or evil people who are in charge of the vampires or anything. It's just girl falls in love with the vampire, and it causes problems because he's a vampire. It is a companion to Neighborly, so it's not a sequel, but it takes place in the same universe, in the same town, and a side character from Neighborly is also a side character in this. She's got a much smaller part in this book, more like a cameo, but I'm very excited about this. I will have the link to my website in my description. I always have the link to my website in my description, but on my website there are a bunch of quick links to the book. Anyway, moving on to actual favorite things that I didn't create. So I'm going to do what I seem to always do and start the video off with my favorite books from this month. So the first book that I want to talk about is Lost in the Moment and Found by Seanan McGuire, which is the 8th book in the Wayward Children series. I adored this so much. Just like all of the books in the series. I think this is my favorite series ever, to be honest. It's so good. In case nobody knows, I'll briefly tell you what the series is about. The Wayward Children series is about a boarding school for teenagers who have been to magical lands and have since come back and are having trouble dealing with not being in their magical lands anymore. Now, the really interesting thing about this series is that all the even-numbered books are standalones, and all the odd-numbered books are like a continuous series. So you can read them all in order, or you can just read the even-numbered books in any order, or you can just read the odd-numbered books in order. But super cool. Love it so much. So basically, all the odd-numbered books, the ones that have a continuous story, are about kids at the boarding school. So it follows the same group of kids. Sometimes there's a new student who ends up coming in one of the books. But mainly, it's about the same group of kids. And the even-numbered books are standalones because they just focus on one person who may or may not be someone from the odd-numbered books. Sometimes it's someone from the odd-numbered books. Sometimes it's someone we've never met before. And telling us about what happened to them when they went to their magical land. So this is a number 8, so it's an even-numbered book. So this was a standalone, and this was about somebody going to her magical land, which was basically a door into other magical lands. And it was really cool. There were consequences to going into the different magical lands, and there was like a lot about like consent in things that like maybe sometimes people don't even think is something that you would need consent for, which was really interesting. The other thing that I do want to point out is at the beginning of this story, before she goes to her magical land, is really upsetting. There's nothing graphic or anything that like physical that happens, but all of the stuff in the story at the beginning that makes her want to run away and go to this magical land is very upsetting. And I did have difficulty reading it, even though I knew that nothing was going to happen, because there is an author's note at the beginning, which I really appreciated, and I'm going to read it to you. While all the Wayward Children books have dealt with heavy themes and childhood traumas, this one addresses an all too familiar monster, the one that lives in your own home. Themes of grooming and adult gaslighting are present in the early text. As a survivor of something very similar, I would not want to be surprised by these elements where I didn't expect them. I just want to offer you this reassurance. Antsy runs. Before anything can actually happen, Antsy runs. Which that made me cry the first time I read that. And even though I knew nothing would happen, it was still so upsetting to read about. So that's a warning for you guys, but nothing happens. Anyway, this was fantastic. My other two favorite books from May were these Mandalorian comics. Amazing. It was season 1, part 1, and season 1, part 2. So both of these equaled the first season. And it was basically exactly the same. There was a few things in it that I feel like didn't translate well into the drawing. Like the thing that happened, if I hadn't seen the show, the drawing didn't depict what actually happened, and I wouldn't have known what was happening. But it was only a couple times that happened. Overall, it was amazing, and I loved it so much, and it made me so happy, and it was so cozy and comforting to read these and look through the artwork, and I loved it so much, and if there were more of them, I want them. I think it was only 2 parts, actually, that if I hadn't seen the show, I wouldn't know what happened, based on the drawings. So besides those 2 parts, I think that everything was done so well. Mando's flashbacks from when he was a kid and when he was found by the Mandalorians, I thought was really cool the way they did it in here. And the dialogue and the art to go along with the dialogue for funny parts were delivered really well. I thought it was fantastic. I read these each in about an hour. Lovely. Adored them. Would like more. The next thing I'm going to talk about is a video game, and I feel like it will come as no surprise to most people. And that is Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Oh, there, we'll make it. There we go. Now you can see. This is a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, and I love it. I love that it's a direct sequel. There's a lot of similarities to Breath of the Wild, and there's a lot of really different things from Breath of the Wild, which is really cool. So all of your powers and everything that you had in the first one are all gone. And there's an explanation, which is good. Otherwise, that's silly. So it's good that there's an explanation as to all the stuff that you got in the first one. It's all gone now. I really think there is more of a story to this one, which I think is really cool. I feel like a lot of your side quests are like focusing around the same subject. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, a lot of your side quests were just like silly little things. And a lot of the ones that I've come across so far in this one are very story-based and are all surrounding the same thing, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I don't want to spoil anything. But it's really cool. It has the same map with some differences and also some big differences. So like the main map is basically the same, but there are certain areas that have changed because it takes place a few years after the Breath of the Wild, and something has happened. Like at the beginning of the game, something happens that changes things. But there's also Sky Islands and something called the Depths. So there's like also stuff way underground, which is really cool. So the map is huge. And there's also really cool powers that you get in this. I'm sure people who have been on TikTok or Facebook or anything probably know that you can build things in this game, which is really cool. I'm not the best at it, but luckily you don't need to build intricate things in order to do things in the game. It's very minimal building that you need to do. So if that's something that like worries you going into the game because of seeing what some other people have built, you don't need to build big war machines or anything. Like it's very minimal building that is required for the game, at least so far. And I've done like, I don't know how much I've played, but I've done a lot, and like I've beaten the first temple so far. So I do find there's a lot of wholesomeness in this game, which is great. There's different stuff with the Koroks, and they're way more involved with some of the things you have to do for them, and I love them so much. I love the Koroks so much. They make me so happy. They're the cutest things in the entire world. I can't. I love them so much. Pretty much the only thing that I don't like about the game so far is that like the powers that you got from beating the Divine Beasts in the first game, you don't have anymore. And those were super helpful in like normal gameplay, even when you weren't fighting monsters. Like Rivali's Gale, I miss Rivali's Gale so much. So much. And my remote bombs. I miss my remote bombs. Rivali's Gale and remote bombs were... It's so hard without them. There's also way more monsters and way more big monsters that are ridiculous. But there's also way different types of weapons and different things that you can do with weapons, which is really cool. And there are some cool powers in this that you don't have in the first one. So overall, I don't know if I like it better than Breath of the Wild. I feel like they're probably equal for different reasons. But I love it. It is an amazing escape. The artwork is absolutely gorgeous. The storyline is really interesting and fun. And the first boss that I beat had the best fucking music I have ever, like, the best. So, also, when Link is cooking in this game, he hums different Zelda tunes, which is amazing. I have one more favorite, and that is a board game. Surprise, surprise. It is called Shadows in the Forest, and it was so cool. It's adorable, and it's interesting, and it's just like mind-blowing when it shouldn't be mind-blowing. So, Shadows in the Dark is a game that you play in the dark, in the pitch darkness. Like, you can't play it during the day with windows open and just the lights turned off. It needs to be pitch black when you play, which is so cool. So, basically, it's a board with a path of different rocks going around the board, and then you have these 3D rocks and trees that are just made up of like 2 pieces of cardboard that slide into each other, so it has like 4 pieces coming out, and you place them around the board in between the paths. And it is a mostly cooperative game. I say mostly because it's like everybody against one person, so if you are not the one person, then it's cooperative for you. So all the people on the cooperative side get to be these cute little creatures called shadowlings that kind of remind me of like little Studio Ghibli characters, and they have little glowing faces, and you have to hide them in the shadows. So you have to hide them somewhere on the board in between like the part of like a tree or a rock that like juts out, whatever. And then the person who's playing on their own, who's playing against everybody else, is a lantern. And it's like an actual little mini lantern. And they roll a glow-in-the-dark die to see how many spaces they get to move on the board. And when they move, the shadows being cast across the rocks and the trees move. And so basically the point of the game is to get all of your shadowlings. You have to start them at different parts of the board. The point of the game is to get all the shadowlings together into one spot. But if you are caught by the lantern, then you're frozen and you can't move until another shadowling comes to rescue you. And so each turn, the person who's playing the lantern has to close their eyes, and then you can turn on a very faint light as long as you can still see where the lantern is casting shadows. And people can move their characters anywhere on the board as long as they do not cross a beam of light, as long as they are still in the shadows during their move. And you have to drag them across the board so that the person who's being the lantern can hear them. And then once they've made their moves, they've put them where they think they're going to be hidden. The faint light that you've had to help you see your characters gets turned off. And then all that's left is the lantern on the board. And the person who's playing the lantern can't see your characters if they're in the shadows. And then when they move the lantern, then sometimes your character who was hidden is now visible. And it's really cool. So for example, one person who was playing the lantern started with the lantern at the other end of the board from her. So we all had to hide on the opposite side of the board, also on the opposite side of the trees and the rocks, like on her side, so that we were in the shadows. And when she opened her eyes and saw like where how all the light was coming this way, and so all the shadows were over on her side of the board, she said, "This is so cool because the lantern is over here. Presumably you're all hidden on my side of the board and I can't see you." So it's really cool. Like, of course she can't. That's the whole point of the game. But for some reason you still think that maybe it wouldn't work as well as it should, but it does. And it was really, really cool. And it was a lot of fun. And because it's cooperative, it's a little less stressful for the people who are on the cooperative side because you can all work together and whisper and like point to where you think you should move. You can all make these decisions together. Even when a shadowling is frozen, their shadowling can't move, but they can help you decide about where you should move. So much fun. We played 2 rounds. The first round ended pretty quickly, and the second round lasted actually quite a while. So, super fun game. I am actually currently getting a game store to look into ordering it for me because I want a copy of it for myself. And also, like, super easy to learn and catch on. So, like, you can play it with kids, you can play it with adults. Fantastic. Let me know if you guys want any other kinds of videos, because I only do like 3 kinds of videos. Basically, I do my favorites videos, I do my document your life video, and now I'm doing video game playthroughs. And sometimes I do vlogs randomly if something interesting is happening, right? But I don't have any other kind of videos that I'm posting regularly that aren't video game playthroughs. Like, I'm posting the video game playthrough regularly because I have all of the footage for that already done for The Last of Us Part 2. I don't want to do book reviews or anything if there's any negativity involved. If there's a book that I've read that I love that I want to go into more detail about outside of my favorites videos, then I could do that. But I don't know if anyone wants to see any book hauls or any kind of theme videos about, like, I don't know, books with favorite covers or favorite first lines, anything like that. I know these are just things that I'm thinking off the top of my head. But if there's any kinds of videos like that, that people want to see, let me know, and maybe that's something that I can do, because I do like doing these sit down in front of my camera videos. I just don't really have any ideas for any. Except for the favorites videos, and then like the occasional book review, I guess, if there's a book that I really, really loved and wanted to talk about in detail. Anyway, I guess that's all. I hope everyone has a great day and happy reading.